right. Well, welcome everybody to the informational briefing about our current request for proposal call at USC Sea Grant. I'm Carla Heidelberg, and I'm the director of USC Sea Grant. And within this meeting, what we hope to do is provide an overview of how we run our call for proposals and provide an opportunity to answer questions during this meeting. This is being recorded for those who couldn't attend. If you happen to have a question that you're not comfortable asking in front of the crowd, we will provide contact information toward the end of this meeting, or you're able to reach out to either Phyllis or I at any time for more personal questions. So next slide, please. Because we have quite a few people on this call, what we'd like to ask is that you keep yourself muted during the presentation, and feel free to use the chat and the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question, just so we can kind of manage that process. And again, we'll make the recording of this presentation available to the participants and to those who weren't able to attend. Next slide. All right, so what we'd like to do in this short briefer is just describe what our call is, the types of proposals that do well in our call, and our objectives for this specific call. We also want to go over some of the logistical components of how to apply. And then again, we'll provide points of contact for any follow-up questions and that we can't get to during the course of this meeting, or again, if you have something you'd like to talk to us about individually. Next. We have a lot of new people on this call, and I'd like to welcome you to USC Sea Grant. We are a program that's been in existence for over 50 years, and we're part of a nationwide program run through NOAA that is a state, federal, and university partnership. We serve the program operates in all coastal states and Great Lakes states, and then also in Guam and Puerto Rico and Hawaii. Well, Hawaii is a coastal state, so yeah. Our program is unique in that we tend to focus specifically on issues that affect kind of urban oceans or high density populations along coastal zones. And so while we fund all kinds of research, we really like to fund research that kind of goes along with that theme of kind of the urban impact in the oceans. Next. We serve, I also should say that while we serve much of California, we focus here in the Los Angeles region, specifically within 6 counties surrounding the Los Angeles region. Our mission is to contribute to the solving of problems in the urban ocean and to foster the public's understanding of coastal, ocean, and social science. We recognize opportunities for blue economy, coastal commerce, and recreation, and we solicit and fund relevant, innovative science to inform better decision-making and improve life in this highly urban area. All right, so our program, we're a little bit different than some of the other federal agencies in that we don't have huge awards, but we have impactful awards that range from about $10,000 to $65,000 per year for 2-year proposals, with approximately a total of $50,000 for our full budget for new research. But a lot of people who apply often choose to think about including a graduate trainee as part of their proposal, which falls outside of this scope of funding. So that's extra money on top of what we fund. The one thing that's a little bit different about USC Sea Grant is that we actually require a 50% match from the universities that are applying, or from the project teams that are applying. And we get a lot of questions about what types of things fall into the match category. So I would like to suggest just a few things that are very common that we see all the time. So salaries that are paid for by the university or another organization can be used as match, as long as the work will be dedicated to the proposed project. Also, other things like maybe lab support can be counted as match, or let's say a student intern that will work on this project but is funded by other means. A lot of you are marine scientists that go to sea, and so ship time can be used as match. And we're happy to work with you on developing a budget for those of you who are first-time Sea Grant proposers who haven't done a budget quite like what's required for NOAA Sea Grant. As I mentioned before, our projects are funded for 2 years, and the anticipated start date would be on February 1, 2026, dependent on the availability of NOAA getting the funds to us by that date as well. Okay, next. The proposals can be submitted by any faculty from any university, public or private institution of higher education, but the PI must be deemed eligible by their institution to apply for NOAA Sea Grant funds. We don't need you to actually be here in California, but the work that's being done has to be in California and relevant to the urban ocean theme. We also encourage proposals that are comprised of partnerships between universities and non-for-profits or state, regional, and federal agencies, tribes, and other research and academic institutions. And we have 4 main themes or concentrations that the research should fall into. You don't need to have your research fall into all 4 of these. In fact, just 1 is fine. But our 4 priority areas, which are clearly outlined in our strategic plan, are healthy coastal ecosystems, sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, resilient communities and economies, and environmental literacy and workforce development. You'll also notice that in our posted request for proposals that we have some additional funding opportunities for priority areas that we've identified as unique to this year. Things like environmental DNA studies, things like specific areas that fall within these 4 priority areas. It will be important for you in your proposal to identify which priority area that your research will fall into. And with that, I would like to turn over the rest of our introduction to Phyllis Griffman, who's the Executive Director of USC Sea Grant. You're muted.
Thanks, Carla. So here's the timeline, which is in the call for proposals. Today is the webinar. March 7th is the preliminary proposal deadline. If there's a deadline, it has to be by close of business or 5 p.m. on that day that it's submitted. I'll go over how you submit things in a minute. May 9th, we will let you know whether or not we are encouraging you to submit a full proposal. June 23rd is when those full proposals will be due. And then we spend the summer doing reviews. We'll notify PIs and potential PIs of our funding decisions in mid-September, mid to late September. And projects start, as Carla said, February 1, 2026. But let me just asterisk that by saying that the date of the beginning of projects is dependent on us receiving money from NOAA by that day. And sometimes it's late, just saying, it's a possibility. Next slide. So a preliminary proposal. And you must submit a preliminary proposal if you intend to submit a full proposal. It's short. It's a narrative of about 400 words per section. It needs to have a statement of the project, of the problem, the research objectives, a brief overview of your methodologies, the benefits and broader impacts. And by this, because Sea Grant is a research program that's relatively unique among other federal research programs, is that we are required to take results of funded research and make sure that they're available and disseminated to user community decision makers, to the state, to local governments, to where these results are needed. We're a really, we depend upon the relevance of our projects to keep us current and to make sure that the investments that we make on behalf of the federal and state government are relevant, used, it's useful information. You have to submit a curriculum vitae, and we just need an overview of your total funding request. We don't need much detail there. And these are submitted through EC Grant. You would register right here at this URL. You would register with EC Grant to be allowed to submit a proposal. And this outline is available in EC Grant. It's kind of like a, fill in the blanks type of thing. Leah Shore, who's online with us today, is the person to ask about EC Grant questions. Next slide. We will encourage highly ranked preliminary proposals to submit full proposals. We'll discourage ones that don't review well in our preliminary proposal review, even though if you submit a preliminary proposal and you're not encouraged, you can still submit a full proposal. In letting you know whether or not you're encouraged for submitting a full proposal, we'll give you a brief idea of why your preliminary proposal isn't being encouraged. And if you feel like you can address any issues in a full proposal, you're welcome to do so. Next slide. The preliminary proposal criteria for ranking is adherence to the urban ocean theme, the relevance to the focus areas that we describe in our strategic plan. And I really encourage you to become familiar with the strategic plan. Assess capacity of principal investigators for the research described, and that the budget is appropriate for the proposed work. Next slide. For a full proposal, these are the application components, and they must be prefaced with a signed institutional cover page from your research university. So you have to do your timing with enough time to be able to submit it to your contracts and grants office or whoever is the gatekeeper for your proposals at your university, so they can review your budget and sign off on the research proposal. It requires a summary so that there's 2 pages where you just describe what the work is going to be. And then the research proposal, which we encourage you to not go beyond 15 pages. The title, the principal and any associate investigators, the funding request. Again, what's the problem that you're trying to solve? What's the investigatory question or hypothesis and the motivation for the project, goals and objectives, methodologies, any related research that you're familiar with. And that's usually done in a sort of literature review format. All budget related information, in other words, the more specific you are with your budget, why are you asking for this much money in travel? Why do you need this much money in lab analysis, etc.? And then again, anticipated benefits and how you intend to communicate the results of the project, and then what would the broader impacts be and your references. And again, well, in communication of results, if you're funded by Sea Grant, we fully intend to, we have a really great communications team. And so if you have questions about how you would communicate your results, there is our communications team and also Sea Grant Extension. So some of our Sea Grant Extension people are on this call. Sea Grant Extension is basically, in a way, the heart of how we get results of funded research out to those decision makers that we referenced before. And once you're funded, we're more than willing to help you get through those hurdles. Not necessarily in the proposal, but in the longer term as you conduct your research. There are a few other required components. There's the proposal and CVs, the budget and budget justification, a work schedule, your list of concurrent grants, current and pending grants. If you want a Sea Grant trainee, in other words, if you want a research assistant, you would just tell us that you want a research assistant. And usually we try to assign one trainee per project. You do not have to put that in your budget. It comes out of a separate pot of money. You need a data management plan. How are you going to manage this data? Where is it going to be available? You need environmental permits. In other words, you need a NEPA form. And some of you are familiar with that because you probably face this with other proposals, but there is in EC Grant a NEPA form that you need to fill out. Letters of support are always useful. They're not required, but they're really helpful. And this goes back to how are you going to disseminate the results from your work? Often the letters of support will come from people who would be saying, hey, we really want to see that this research gets done, and this is why we need it, and this is how we'll use it. And then what we ask of you, and we ask of you before your proposals are due, your recommendations for peer review. In other words, people that you don't have a conflict of interest with, but who could recommend the work going forward. And we will contact those people that you suggest. The deadline is June 23rd, again by 5 p.m. Next slide, please. And this is how we evaluate full proposals. The project rationale, technical and scientific merit, whether it's innovative or not. When we talk about relevant research, we talk about applied research a lot of times, but that doesn't mean that we're not also interested in innovations and new methodologies and new ways of doing this kind of work. Programmatic justification, your user relationships, and that, these are all pieces of the proposal that you submitted through EC Grant. We want to have a fairly specific idea of the relationship to our stated priorities that are in the RFP and that are in our strategic plan. Your qualifications, your past record of publications and so on, an appropriate and cost-effective budget, and your data management plan. The structured external review process, I'm not sure whether this is on the next slide, but is it? Can I see the next slide? Okay. So our preliminary proposals are evaluated by a set of academic coordinators, that is representatives of the various disciplines. that are often represented in Sea Grant work. In our structured external review process, there are 3 steps. One is that peer review process. So we will send out requests for letter reviews, for peer reviews. Some based on your suggestions for peer reviewers and some based on our own research in the area of your proposal. Secondly, we mount an external technical review panel. Usually that consists of 5 or 6 people, 4 or 5 or 6 people, depending on how many proposals we get, who will use these rubrics to evaluate your proposal. And the final layer of review is by a state panel made up of of delegates from all of the agencies in the California Natural Resources Agency. This is a group called RASGAP, and they will look at your proposal with an eye toward what the state needs are for information. They will look at the peer reviews and our technical reviews too, and help us to structure our ranking. And after that, we'll make our decisions and let you know whether your proposal is accepted or not. I will say that, depending on the number of proposals we get, we usually try and fund, and I can't say this with any certainty at this time, we usually try to fund between 4 and 6 full proposals for the full 2 years with graduate assistance. With that, we'll open the next slide. Yeah, this is for Carla and me. This is our contact information. EC grant questions, go to Leah Shore. And with that, ask questions, ask away. And raise your hand. I don't see any hands. Okay, no questions. You know everything you need to know now? Well,
So I will chime in just to emphasize, we see some really great proposals that are exciting. But they're sometimes exciting to me as a scientist, and you don't want to overlook the importance that we ask our RASGAP panel to actually tell us what they would recommend as something that they need. And so you want to craft your proposal in a way that's going to be useful to a state agency, a local management, or something like that. That kind of hits that what is the applicability of what you're doing and how does it address one of the 4 priority areas that we outlined earlier. So it's a little bit different beast than some of the other federal agencies. Mohammed.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
yes.
Perfect. I have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. Lots of good information. I'm a new postdoc at USC, and I have a couple of questions about the budget. So the first one is about the matching, the 50%. So as a postdoc who is fully funded, if say I propose something, will my funding, my time that is being paid by the university count towards the 50%? And the second question is, if we have, again, as a postdoc at USC, can I be a PI on the proposal, or do I need a faculty member to be the PI? Maybe I will stop here just to give others an opportunity to ask questions.
I'm happy to take that, Phyllis. Okay. So the first is yes, your salary could be used as match as long as you're planning to use some of your time, for the project that you propose. Every institution has different rules about whether a postdoc can be a PI or not. I believe USC's blanket rule is that postdocs cannot be the PI on a grant, but there are exception requests, meaning you are welcome to submit a request for an exception to that rule. The reason why USC has chosen to do that is because often a postdoc leaves before the reporting period is over, and the award is actually USC's on the hook for the meeting the obligations. So you may want to pick up a PI that is a regular faculty member of some kind that's approved already through the university. So I hope that answers your question. Again, every university is different, but that is USC's standard policy.
Hi, Hassan. Your question?
Hello, yes, thank you for the great presentation and great to see you. This program has supported my research in the past, and I'm very thankful. Very productive program. Just wanted to understand, I think this is the case for some Sea Grant programs. So is this a two-process review, like academic panel reviews in terms of contribution to the body of knowledge, and also a panel from RASGAP also considers their criteria, or is it combined one process of
It's
review?
a sort of serial process.
Serial process.
So, the pre-proposals, mainly that is relevance to our theme, our program theme, and a broad overview of the capacity of the researcher. The peer reviews would be the part of the process that really hopefully provides some insight as to methodologies by scientists who do similar work. The technical review looks at your methodologies plus broader impacts plus whatever other factors fit into your proposal, and also with an eye toward what's our program theme and what things Sea Grant focuses on. And RASGAP really looks at relevance to the state. And sometimes the RASGAP people, they're so focused on what their agency needs are that they don't do as good a job on the science, and that's why we do the technical review as well. And then we kind of mash them together, and we'll often go back to our technical panel and ask for comments based on what the RASGAP panel says. One of the things that Carla kind of mentioned is she's a natural scientist. I'm a social scientist. And between the two of us, we make a pretty good team for assessing that it's really good science and that it will pass muster and peer review and technical review, and that it addresses the policy issues that we have in our region and our state. Darren had a question about projects focused in Northern California. Yeah, if it's urban, Darren, then we're interested in it. And the distinctions between urban and not urban in California, sometimes it's a pretty gray area, but mostly the urban question is what happens when you have large amounts of people adjacent to coastal zones and large amounts of people in a region who use the coastal zone. We use the coastal zone for everything from recreation to waste disposal. So those kinds of urban questions, they're very well spelled out in our strategic plan. Julia?
Great. Thank you for doing this info session. So I'm curious, there are a lot of topics. I think I need to read the strategic plan in much more detail. So maybe you can just direct me to that if this is going to be covered in that. But there are a lot of topics that kind of align with the core areas that you're funding that kind of dip a toe into human health and kind of a more, I guess I might say, NIH-y type of sphere. And so I guess I'm wondering when RASGAP is evaluating and the scientific review is evaluating, like, how do you, would you caution against, do you have past experience of, people applying and the consensus being like, oh, that could get funded by a different agency is really what I'm trying to ask.
Absolutely. Human health impacts is part of what we do as an urban program. So I wouldn't discourage that at all. I mean, there are a lot of factors. There's, human health and human, health. And we have funded projects that look at everything from impacts of water quality impairments on human health, like swimming health, safety, consumption of seafood, and those kinds of things. And also, some like effects on population. So from small effects to sort of more macro effects. But yeah, those are very interesting to us and very relevant.
I will add one thing that hasn't come up yet. The requirement for broader impacts. Remember that Sea Grant comes with a team, and that team is extension personnel that can help transmit your research into usable formats, or also just with technical, almost social science technical challenges with some of the research that you're doing. We also have an education arm. When everybody's so used to thinking of broader impacts in a very specific way that NSF defines it, and we do broader impacts in a slightly different way. The other thing is more current happenings going on right now. Remember that maybe the traditional broader impacts might be changing just a little bit, but think about things that we focus on, like workforce development, technical training, conveying information in a meaningful way. Those are all really valuable things to think about, and how your research will matter to the Southern California communities, or in the San Francisco community region, but urban areas along the coast of California, or addressing national, priorities. Okay, I think the questions have kind of slowed down, which means that you guys understand everything clearly, and we hope to get great proposals from all of you soon, pre-proposals from all of you soon.
And I'll just say again, if you have proposal ideas, you're not wanting to broach them in a recorded public session, you can always contact Carla or me and ask us questions. If there's anything that you go, as soon as we get off this webinar, you go, shit, I forgot to ask that. Feel free. We're very easily accessible. Okay then. I just see a hand flag. Camille, yeah?
I was just curious if there's any chance that the funding stream might be canceled and over the next year, if it's possible to predict.
It's not possible to predict. Yes, there is uncertainty in the system. We are going about our jobs as we do until we're told not to. Right now, every year in the budget, Sea Grant is a line item in the NOAA budget. And we work with our delegates in Congress as a network. So mainly with the people on the appropriations subcommittees to enhance and secure the Sea Grant appropriation. And, we've been successful so far, but we are in an era of some uncertainty, I won't lie. And so right now we're doing our call for proposals and going about our business as we always do.
Thank you.
Yeah. The good news is that we have I would argue that Sea Grant has a very easy tie to economic development and prosperity. And we do good things, and with very small pots of money compared to other things. So, yeah, send in your proposals.
And if you represent an institution that has ties or access to congressional delegates, by all means, support Sea Grant. And if you want material to help you do that, we can provide it. We're not asking you to do it. We're just saying that opportunity is available. Righty then.
All right, any final questions? Thank you all for attending today. really, really thoughtful questions from the field. I hope I've been helpful for everybody. So with that,
Proposals.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Ciao, ciao.